transport infrastructure, particularly rail and road development, to be the key drivers of growth in the coming years. But Fitch Solutions flagged downside risks to this outlook that includes the current surge in COVID-19 infections driven by the more contagious Delta variant. Fitch also said any lockdown measures may also weaken the industry's growth in the second half. Despite these downside risks, the think tank noted the construction sector's growth will likely be sustained next year, but at a slower pace of 16%. Okay, guys, let's check in on how our markets are doing this last trading day of this long week. You can see us inching up, continuing to go on that rally up by 0.2%, almost there to 6,900 level, 6,850.55. This, of course, comes, and I'm going to pull out the 3-day chart for you guys so you can see how we were moving in these 3 days, almost sideways, but then nevertheless climbing quite strongly, the most in Asia yesterday, apart, from the more optimistic tones that we're hearing this morning. Even yesterday, Credit Suisse had already upgraded our equities to overweight. They said attractive valuations, low foreign weightings, strong earnings recovery, and the expectation that, get this, COVID cases may fall faster than expected. That would be great news indeed. Now, let's take a look at how our sectors are performing amid all of this, particularly the mining and oil counter here. You can see on my terminal here, down by 0.2%. That is, however, after having seen quite a surge yesterday. There were reports already, and this we have more information on that, on the metallic mineral industry, which was up by 24.5% year-on-year in the first half of 2021. That is according to the MGB, or the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, and that brings the amount from January to June to 68.63 billion pesos worth. They call this a sterling performance. What is the majority of our mining minerals here? Nickel is around 53.4%, gold around 35%, and then copper around 11% of our production. But you can see on the table here that we're flashing on your screens how nickel, in terms of volume, sales were up by 39%, the value of which was 21.42 billion pesos. That's as the prices of nickel rose by 40% in this period. Gold, however, was also up by 3%. That was to the tune of 22.15 billion pesos in contribution. Also, gold's prices were up by 9.8% in the first half of the year. And finally, copper, despite the fact that the production volume was down by 24% to 7.5 billion pesos, the copper prices have been up by 65.5%. And now finally, just one thing to note here, another IPO in the works, and that is MEDILINES. They're setting a pure play healthcare IPO, hopefully in 2021. Now, what is MEDILINES? They are a medical equipment distributor, and they are saying that the IPO will be up to 2.02 billion pesos. They've already filed it with PNB as the sole manager. They are, of course, distributing medical devices from Siemens, Braun, and Varian, among others, and the product portfolio includes devices for diagnostics, dialysis, as well as cancer therapy. So when will this be happening? Well, the target offer period is from November 11 to 17, and the listing on November 25. So something to watch out for there. Meanwhile, here to chat with us about this type of fundraising plays and more, we have with us Rastine Mercado of Chinabank Securities. Good morning, Rastine, and welcome back.
Good morning, Danie. Thanks for having me.
Rastine, let's kick off with the MEDILINES IPO. Finally, a healthcare-based pure play that we've been waiting for. We don't even have a healthcare index. We don't even have a pure play stock. How important is this going to be, particularly in the time of COVID?
Well, I guess it's a good thing to have these types of companies coming to market, especially at a time like this, right? Given the environment, these are essential services, right? So I guess this is one to watch. So hopefully we do get a lot more of those types of companies moving forward into the next coming years.
Will this lead to more other types of stocks possibly also listing? We did have the hospital group of MVP did not really materialize into an IPO, but you still have, of course, Ayala's healthcare arm among others. Is this going to be the start of healthcare players looking into listing?
Well, hopefully that's the case, right? We've I mean, the market environment has been challenging, right? So that comes with some obviously negatives that it might be hard to go to market. But we have seen a lot of companies coming to market, especially this year, right? So this really isn't a surprise. If you want to build your business, I think it's a good spot to be conducting these offers. You have market liquidity, you have a recovery story as you navigate the pandemic, and then you also have the low interest rate environment, right? So it incentivizes equity fundraising, as this could lead to potentially more capacity for debt. So more debt at low interest rates should be good for business building.
We haven't heard that in a while. What you mentioned, optimistic market recovery, right? Even in the past few days, but suddenly, you've got Credit Suisse, you've got Moody's saying this. How surprising was this overweight outlook of Credit Suisse, and also just the fact that some are already looking at us actually having less COVID cases than we are expecting.
Well, I think it's really not much of a surprise. If you've seen the past 2 years, right, we've really been one of the countries or equity markets that haven't been in vogue, right? In terms of outlook, we've seen outlook for the Philippines consistently being revised lower over the past 2 years. Last year, it was because of lack of fiscal stimulus, and then this year, obviously, vaccination rates continue to be sluggish. Now that in May, the story was the second half will be stronger because vaccination rates will pick up. Now that that story is coming to fruition, right? I think the headroom for gains in our valuations is there, especially if we continue to sustain the momentum into 2022. So I think it's really just more of slowly getting there, and I think a lot of people or a lot of other countries paying attention to that should help unlock values in our equities.
What are investors watching? Because yesterday there were reports also from the DOH that we could be reaching 42,000, more than 40,000 cases just in NCR by the end of September. And then also on the same day, a million vaccinations will be arriving in the next couple of months. How are you weighing the risks and opportunities?
Well,
Which side is it tilted on?
Well, historically, the Philippines, I mean, like the equity market of the Philippines, PSEI, has been a little bit more, it has a close inverse relationship with case counts, right? The higher your case counts, usually that sends markets lower. But what we've seen over the past weeks is that markets really aren't paying attention to that rise in case counts anymore. As we've seen over the past weekend, we had a record number of cases, daily cases, and the market continues to be buoyant at around 6, 7, 6, 8. So that is encouraging, right? Foreign funds being net buyers for most of the days of the past week also prove that there might be really some legs to this rally. Volumes also say that. So I think the market really is starting to pivot towards the more the stronger recovery story we have in 2022, which we originally hoped to see in 2021. So again, it just comes to show that slow gains have been made, and it's just a matter of realizing those expectations down the line that will propel equity valuations upward.
Rastine, when you see this chart, we've already broken through all moving averages here, short and long term. Is this already a trend, and how much room to run do we have to hit 7,000 levels in the short term?
Well, I think over the next 2 weeks, right, you will definitely probably see we'll definitely see a test of 7,000. Though selling pressure has been strong around 6, 9, 7,000 at this point, right? We've been seeing that over the past couple of days. So hopefully, once we do get to test that 7,000, 7,1, we may see a consolidation right there, just because it was the resistance back in June. So after that consolidation, if a recovery story really is more firm at this point, or even moving towards the next few months, then we may see prices heading higher, pushing above 7,200. So for our full year target, we're still seeing 7,300 as a possible end of year close for the PSEI. Again, that's contingent on the improvement in vaccination rates and output.
There you have it. So 72,100 is your target here for the year end at the moment. Rastine, let's talk about the mining sector. We've seen, of course, surges in commodity prices, nickel and copper in particular, but even gold. How temporary is the surge, and also the output that we've been seeing, and of course the reopening of economies that have been importing this, versus the fact that the Delta variant is threatening again the PMI indices and the manufacturing of other countries, and also the rally of the mining sector?
Well, if the surge in commodities this year is really driven by a confluence of different factors, right? So last year, those that were looking to build up production capacity for these commodities suddenly had to put their expansion plans on hold, right? And then later in 2020, you had that resurgence of demand as economy started to open up again. So that led to a supply squeeze. So that is what's driving commodity prices upward. So technically speaking, they still remain an uptrend. Just because it would take time for that additional capacity to reach markets, right? So that's why it's very opportunistic, at least in our view at this point, when it comes to commodity trades. But overall, the impact of the Delta variant and possible lockdowns in other countries in the world, it's still good to look at year and year where we're at, right? Last year, the lockdowns were more expansive. This year, you have a lot more of the population being vaccinated, so that should lead to less economic disruption. So I don't think that we'll see a decline in these prices anytime soon, given that.
Okay, so actually might be stabilizing there. You also have the nickel prices here on my terminal. Finally, Rastine, just question on the property space and the outlooks on the back of all of these REITs coming online. Of course, Chinabank is also part of that. But nevertheless, just a general outlook, especially since we've had comments, particularly from Mega World's Kevin Tan, saying that they're really exiting the Pogo market. It's not going to be the REIT. It's not going to. They're slowly taking it out of the Mega World portfolio. What's the implication of that on the property players that are, of course, desperate now for tenancy and even a lot actually possibly needing these POGOs?
So the property sector is heavily hit. I mean, if you look at all of our sector indices, it's one of the laggards really across the market. So it's from a confluence of different factors. So first, mobility remains soft. So revenue from malls continue to be weak. Also, one thing that we saw is Pogo exodus, or the consolidation of the industry, may have led to a downward revaluation of the sector. So recall that the influx of Pogos pre-pandemic helped drive office space and residential demand, right? So that may have driven valuations higher. Now we're seeing a kind of reset at this point. So though it must be noted that some property developers have remained resilient as well. In terms of REITs, no more Pogos in Mega World, for example. I think this will help remove the notion of risk associated with these tenant types, considering the office spaces take up. So the volatility in occupancy rates may die down. So ultimately, this may help ease that uncertainty.
Okay, there you have it. Thank you so much for those insights. And as mentioned, looking forward as well to those REITs coming into play in the next couple of weeks. That was, of course, Rastine, Mercado, Chinabank, Securities.
Thank you for having me, Danie.
Checking in on our biggest headlines, the Philippines continues to ramp up its battle against money launderers and terrorist financiers. This after it froze 3.3 billion pesos worth of assets in the first half of the year. AMLC Chairman and Bangko Sentral Governor Ben Diokno told the Philippine Star that the country's Loan Financial Intelligence Unit filed 63 cases from January to June. Among these include money laundering, terrorism financing, as well civil, forfeiture, and administrative cases. Diokno added that the AMLC has deprived money launderers and other criminals of various assets, including 121 hectares of properties related to terrorism. Recall that last June 25, Paris-based global dirty money watchdog Financial Action Task Force added the Philippines to its gray list of jurisdictions under increased monitoring. However, the regional affiliate of the FATF said the country has made notable progress in addressing technical compliance deficiencies in its framework last July. The BPO industry will need funding to scale its upskilling program to address industry demands. That is according to IBPAP Chairman Benedict Hernandez. Hernandez says the industry has been working with the DICT to train and upskill thousands of workers, but he says that number should go up in the hundreds into the hundreds of thousands to position the country for faster growth and to maintain our top global position. The industry group official said upskilling can be accelerated with enough funding. And that's a first look into the business day. Today's Friday, September 3, 2021. Catch Business World Live for the market close. It's at 3:15 p.m. today. I'm Danie Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.